Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Young Adult Night. Hey, that's all you got. Come on, give me something. Look, let me tell you that tonight might be the most fun young adult night that we have ever done in the history of Definition Young Adults. And the reason is all these lovely 7 people sitting up here with me right now, and everything that we're going to talk about tonight is going to be really fun. But first, I want to shout out everybody watching online on the YouTube stream. Man, glad you guys are joining us tonight. But listen, tonight we're going to do a Q&A panel about some really hot topics about singleness, dating, and sex. And so we're super excited. I'm joined here with some amazing people. And look, we went on Instagram, we went in group meets everywhere we could and asked you guys to submit questions, and y'all showed up, okay? We got a lot of questions to get through tonight. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. But first, I want to tell y'all something. As we're going through the panel tonight, if a question comes to mind and you're like, man, I would love to ask this group of people this question, well, then you can submit that question right here. If you text on the screen, YA question to 97,000, then you can submit your question. At the end, we're going to do a lightning round, and we're going to try to get to as many of those questions as we can. But y'all ready to jump into this tonight? Yeah? All right, now listen, this is family, this is church, so I want y'all to feedback. I want you, if you hear something that's good, man, I want you to shout, that's good. And okay, and if you hear something that's bad, well, maybe don't shout, that's bad, because culture of love and all that, but we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. Well, you're going to get to know these panelists as we go throughout our conversation, but to go ahead and tell you, we're joined by several amazing people. I'm going to start right here with number 1. I didn't even know we were both wearing denim jackets tonight. Look at that. Well, yeah.
It's a newlywed
thing. To become
thing.
one. To become what you say?
It's a newlywed thing.
That's right. This is my lovely wife, Jenna Carson. And so super excited she's here. Her response to being asked to be on the panel, I asked her and she said, well, I figured it would happen eventually, so sure. So I think she's excited to be here. Yeah, okay. So we have Jenna here, and this is Miss Sarah Akurumi. And so glad Sarah's here. And then we have Nicole and Jason Choate, our married couples. Nicole and Jason, how long have you guys been married?
8.5 years.
8.5 years. So there we go. And then we have Miss Jessica Thompson over here on the panel with us. And then last but not least, Mr. and Mrs. Stutz, Jonathan and Alexa Stutz. Give them some love. How long have you guys been married?
12 years.
12 years. And they say if they make it past tonight, Nicole and Jason and John, this is the real test to their marriage, is answering all these questions up here together. So, we're going to go ahead and jump into it, and we're going to start with our first question tonight, which was submitted by one of you, which is a question that I think that a lot of people are looking for the answer to, and it's this. It is, how do you know when someone is the one? How do you know when someone is the one? Is there anybody who wants to kick us off with this one?
I actually do have a thought about this because, for a while it was like, there's the one is somewhere, and then this whole movement started where it was like, there's not the one, like, stop looking for the one. But I think it's kind of falls in the middle where you can make somebody the one. Like, there are people that are not the one. Like, you can tell when you see them. Right. Or when you've been around them for too long. You know who's not the one.
That's real.
But there are numerous people that could be the one.
Right.
And I think that you do get to a point when you're dating somebody in a relationship where it's like, do you want to make them your one or not? And so I think that, you can look at a couple of things. You look at, what do you want from marriage? And what do you want your marriage to accomplish? And will this person, join you and double that impact, or will they take away from that?
So
and
good.
I think that you can look at a lot of different things, based on what's important to you, their family life, the way they treat people, how active they are in the church, how they serve people, how they love people, and how those things line up with your values and what's important to you. And you can move forward in that relationship and choose that person to be your one, and they choose you to be their one, and then you stick with it.
Yeah, that's so good.
That's why I made her my one. That's what I'm talking about. What she said.
That's wisdom right there.
I would just add one simple thing. I think it's sometimes implied in the question is that marriage is the goal for everybody. I mean, it's this question of like, who's the one? The goal of the Christian life is not to get married. It's to honor Jesus and build a kingdom. And so I think we have to be very careful in American culture because we've been taught that success follows this certain pattern and rhythm. And if you live your entire life as a single person and you honor God and build the kingdom and serve people, I guarantee there is a great reward for you in heaven just as much as anybody else that's married or any kind of relationship.
That's so good. That's so good.
So I was originally going to say you don't. So you don't know if they're the one. Like I don't know. But to Alexa's point, when you have the values that you're looking for in that person, and are they going to make you be a better person, then you kind of are like, okay, I'm going to pursue that relationship more. Because before I met Jason, I dated a lot of people, and they were the one during that time frame, and didn't marry them. So praise the Lord. Sorry if they're watching, but it's cool. But honestly, I just think Alexa made a great point, is that are they going to make you better? Are they going to be, do you have the same dreams? Do you have the same hopes? Do you have the same values? And not fake ones, because I think it's really easy when you're dating someone that you have the same values, and then you see relationships that after they get married, they fall apart because that person was acting a certain way to try to get married or to be a certain way when realistically they weren't. And so it's just really trying to figure that out in that person, and just honestly just connecting with God and asking him.
Right. That's huge. No, that's so good. And I feel like a lot of what I'm hearing both Alexa, you, and Nicole say is that I think a lot of times when we think about the one, it's almost like it's not really a choice. It's more of a finding a choice that's already been made for us. You know, it's like, man, we got to figure out everything we can do to figure out who this mysterious person is. Like, it's already been selected. When what you guys are saying is, no, like, the one is the one that you make the one. I think that was so good. It's a choice that we have to make. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah, I think that's so right.
Yeah,
so
and
good.
I think it comes with time, too.
Right.
You know, so you're not the same person you are when you're 20, 30, well, I don't know about 40 and up yet. I'm not there yet. But I'm not the same person I was when I'm 21 to where I am now. And so, you know, it does come with time because you are going to change. You are going to grow. And, like, is that person the one that you want to be with for the rest of your life and grow old with? And, like, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
I think a big piece of that, too, if you ever ask me to do your weddings, I do a bunch of weddings as a pastor. And one of the pieces of homework that I've started doing in the last year is I have every couple write a one-page paper on why they want to get married. And what everybody initially starts to do is they start to list all the reasons they want to marry that person. Well, I like this about this person, I like that. And to your point, people change over time. And so if you're getting married because of the things you like about that person right now, you're getting married for the wrong reason. And so the one turns into someone else, and you think you didn't find the one.
Wow.
And that's not real.
Wow.
So the question you've got to ask is, why do I want to get married? Period. What are my hopes and dreams for marriage itself?
Independent of the person.
Independent of the person. We talk a lot in American culture about, like, got to have my list of all the qualities I'm looking for in a person. And that's fine. But what do you want out of marriage? Why do you actually want to get married? That's a great thing to think through in the process, and it'll help you decide if someone's the one or not.
We could be done right there, and we could go home and be done. That's so good. Well, let's keep moving through. We've got a lot of questions tonight. So tonight we're talking about singleness, dating, and sex. We're gonna hit on all those topics. We're kind of starting on, because we asked who's the one, we're gonna talk about dating, right? Dating is kind of the pursuit of figuring it out, figuring out who do I want to marry. And so we got several questions around the idea of how do I date in a healthy way? You know, dating is not something that's talked about normally every Sunday at the church. It's something a lot of guys in this room, girls in this room probably want to try to figure out how do I date in a healthy and God-honoring way? If you had to sit down with somebody and talk to them about that, what would be some of y'all's responses?
I'll go.
There you go, Jace. Yes,
Honestly,
sir.
I think you need to date yourself first. You need to know your likes, your dislikes. Maybe you're a traveling person, maybe you're more of a homebody, but the more you know about yourself, the more you can go into that relationship knowing exactly what you want, what you like, what you don't like, and who can really essentially be that connection piece between just really that relationship that you're wanting. So really being able to understand and know yourself is going to be important before you even jump into that. Like, you need to know you. You leave school, you go to college, you move away from home. It's an opportunity for you to take yourself out to eat, go to a movie, go on a vacation, be able to enjoy some things that you're going to be able to share with somebody else once you get to know that person.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Maybe, I don't know. I guess I date myself for a while. I guess I still like to go movies sometimes, by myself. But no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's good. So again, around that question, kind of be more specific. Another question people ask is, what healthy boundaries would you suggest during dating? To be more specific to the question, how do we date in a healthy way? What healthy boundaries would you guys suggest? And I know that on this panel, so Sarah and Jessica are both single adults, and then Jenna and I have been married for like 7 months, so we're very newlyweds, 8.5 years, 12 years, and I think our dating stories were all pretty different. Ours was maybe a little similar, but I know y'all's was pretty different. I'd love to hear a little bit about y'all's story and your story in dating, and what that was like, and I just love to hear like what went well, what didn't go well. If you were to, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's get into it. I'm gonna give you the mic.
I don't know why I'm the one that talks about this, but it's fine. I can tell you what not to do.
Yeah.
So our story is, I think, different from these two, in that we did things backwards, and I do not recommend this for anybody. So I don't want our story to be glorified or something to be like, oh well, they did it, so I can do it too. I feel like the enemy's been trying to tell me not to tell our story because someone's going to take that and twist it, and so I just want you to know that. So we had a baby before we got married. We lived together, so we had premarital sex. We cohabitated. We kind of went to church. We weren't plugged in. We just did all the things not to do that we don't recommend that anybody does, because we didn't have the blessings. We struggled. We emotionally, financially, there's just so many things that we just weren't blessed with because we were just living a sinful life. And so that's kind of what not to do.
Yeah, I think, what she's making it seem a little bit like this was terrible. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now. When she said she doesn't recommend, don't do it. We were at each other all the time. All the time.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way. Not in a good way. When she says that we struggled financially, we essentially one night packed up our whole apartment because the light shut out and we couldn't pay for anything. And we had a 2-month-old, 3-month-old living in sin. We're paying for the decisions that we made. So we didn't have anything to do. So we were almost homeless with a child. Financially, we were buying things because we weren't on the same page. We weren't communicating as a couple. We didn't have the blessing needed to actually walk in what we needed to walk in as far as what God had called us to walk into. And so we struggled for 3 years. And then when we decided look, we've got to get this right, we did a lot of soul searching. We had to go back through the whole dating thing and really get to know each other, and ask the hard questions and have the transparent conversations, everything that you should be doing before you have all the stuff that we had, to make sure that's the person that you want to be with.
Did you notice a difference in that when you got married?
Oh, absolutely.
Explain that. So was it immediate difference? Was it What was, I'm curious about that, yeah.
Oh, let me tell you. When we got married, it was like a 180. So like it was like the lights came on, and it felt like we just had this spiritual like encounter, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like we could really feel like God in that moment. Not that he wasn't there when we were, living in sin, because he's always there, but it was in that moment we could really just feel his presence and know like, okay, we're getting this right together.
And I think really one thing from that is it was like everything clicked into place, and it was like God was smiling on us, like this is what it should be, this is what it should look like, and it was almost like that, well done. Like you've repented, we took time, and we really, everything that we stepped into, we prayed about it together before we moved forward. And so on our wedding day, it was beautiful. And for the past 8.5 years, it's been beautiful, and I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. So
that's why we put the tissues in front of Jason, because we knew he's
I think being aware of that and being able to implement proper boundaries, so things that we had to step into was like, I was on the futon? No, the couch. I was on the couch for 6 to 7 months.
Wow.
Before
you
we
were
got
married, you were living together, that's what you had to do, you were on the couch.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was on the couch for 6 to 7 months. I was helping raise our child. I was with her on that. But I wanted to do everything I could to be honoring in that time.
Wow.
To be prepared in that time. We were asking the question, how do you know the one is the one? And you don't. And so that's where I was just really praying through. And I think the biggest thing that God was really whispering to me in that time and showing me was that she was allowing me to start leading her now. So bringing her to church, even though she wasn't used to where I was going at the time. But when we came to Definition, everything clicked together, and she allowed me to lead, and she helped me figure out things as far as small groups and what it looked like to actually, because I'm an introvert, she pulled me out of what I would be normal to lean into and actually have conversations with individuals, other men, that could lift me up and help prepare me for that next stage of life.
Yeah. That's so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, give it up for that. Such a great story. So you guys kind of experienced, back to the question, what boundaries can we follow during the dating phase, trying to date healthily? So that was kind of, your experience was basically, you didn't, okay? So I'd love to, for you guys, what would you say? You're sitting down with a couple, we're talking boundaries, trying to date in a healthy way.
Yeah. So I guess just to give context, I had made a lot of poor decisions before I met Alexa, and she made a lot of great decisions before she met me. And so I was very blessed to find her and step into this relationship. And she had made a decision early on she wasn't going to kiss anybody until her wedding day. And so I came into that going, okay. And at that point, I'd made a mess of so many relationships, I was willing to try anything else. God, whatever you want to do, whatever challenge you want to put in front of us. And so we actually didn't kiss until our wedding day. And we were not perfect. We made plenty of other mistakes. But I think the biggest thing that I would say is just date within your community.
Right.
And we were so blessed to have Pastor Eric and Amanda, who had gotten married a few years before us, Chris and Maddie, who had gotten married a few years before us, Robbie and Laura, who had gotten married a few years before us. Before we started dating, I asked her brother, I asked her best friend, and I got lunch with her dad before we started dating, and just to ask, like, do you think this is a good idea? And they all said yes.
Wow.
I had my parents, she didn't even know this. I had my parents praying for 3 months before I asked her out, just to pray with me. Is this right or not?
And I'm just out there living my life, not knowing. Had no idea he was interested.
She didn't even know I existed. And I'm praying through these, and I'm inviting people into it. And I just want to tell you guys, culturally, American culture is so isolated and so alone. That's not how it was in the Bible. In the Bible, you had a family around you all the time. And so the pressure that you have to make decisions on your own, you were not made for. Mm-hmm. The question of how do I find the one, if you're trying to do that on your own, goodness gracious. The stress and fear and anxiety that can produce. But when you invite your family and friends and pastors, if you'll let us, and anybody else that you trust that's following Jesus, if you allow them into that, that question becomes a lot less burdensome because you got other people standing with you that can help you get it right. And I mean, if we did anything right, I think that's probably the best thing we did. We just didn't trust ourselves. We just invited people into it.
I would say on that same note, like, before you get into a relationship and into that situation, you define your boundaries before that. I decided in middle school that I was not going to kiss someone before I got married, and that's the only thing that kept me resisting this when I fell in love.
And I definitely would have kissed her if she hadn't decided that in middle school.
But yeah, whatever, and that's not, I don't think kissing before you're married is bad or anything like that, but I'd put, certain boundaries in place and made certain decisions before I was even ever, in a relationship. And then it was a lot easier to stick to something like that rather than, getting in that situation, getting in a relationship, falling in love, and then being like, oh, okay, what should we do? Well, okay, let's decide together. Like, that's not a good idea.
So I don't know if Pastor Jonathan even knows this, but before me and Chris started dating, he gave a message or something. I think it was a revival service. And he was like, so I decided to pray for 3 months for my wife. And so at the time, I was kind of interested in Chris. And so, and I didn't know if he was interested in me at all. I think you were. Oh, yeah. And so I heard that. I was like, wow, Jonathan, I like that idea. Okay, so I'm going to pray for 3 months. And so I was like, and we'll get into this later. I came out of a pretty traumatic experience. My fiance I was originally engaged to passed away. And so I really was trying to seek God and understand how to date again after that. And so I heard that from Pastor Jonathan. I'm like, that's a great idea. Okay, I'm going to try that. And invited some people around. And actually, Nicole, you were like one of the first person I came to. And my mom and one other lady. And it's just some people that you were my mentor at the time. And then my mom too. And I told her, I was like, hey, I think I'm interested in someone. Will you pray with me about it? And each time I asked them, they were like, is it Chris Carson? Yes. And they were like, we knew it. I was like, what? I didn't tell anyone this. I was just going to pray about it. Well, it didn't take 3 months. It took like maybe 3 weeks. And
I know some of you guys just started praying, God, in 3 months, would you provide?
But in all seriousness, we really, from the beginning, try to seek God and really pray about it. And like Pastor Jonathan said, having people around, having Nicole, and having the pastors on staff here, Pastor Eric, my parents, that really is what made the difference, I think, in our relationship. And just to I know that question, a lot of people have asked us that. What are some boundaries? Just very, very practically, some boundaries we set up was also we didn't kiss until our wedding day. And one of the big reasons we did that, and like Alexa said, I don't think it's bad to kiss before your wedding day. We just knew from our past experiences and different struggles we've had that that's really, I think someone said like the engine or the key in the engine, like that starts and leads to other things. And we're like, if that is our boundary, then even if we mess up and we kiss, it's not the end of the world. But if sex is our boundary, okay, we're going to do everything we can, but we're just not going to have sex. Well, what if we slip and fall? Then that could be really bad. And so just having kissing as a boundary was really just so we wouldn't go any farther. Did you have more to say about that?
Yeah, that's great. I think a few things I'd add are one, so when Jen and I started dating, within the first few weeks, Pastor Eric, one of the pastors here, came to me in the admin building lobby, and he said, hey, man, I heard you're dating Jenna. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he said, well, hey, come to my office. I'm gonna give you some tips. Little did I know, he sat down and he was like, everything you've ever believed about dating is wrong, and I'm going to tell you how you should do this. And it was like super radical, and I was terrified. I remember I would talk to Jonathan. I was like, does he really believe this, He was like, yeah, me and Amanda, we didn't spend time alone until we were engaged. And I was like, How did you know each other? You know, it was just like, so anyways, it freaked me out. But really, our story was exactly what you said about community. There were 3 men who were Pastor Allen, Pastor Jonathan, Pastor Parker, several men on our staff who, even before Jen and I started dating, I talked to, and they said, hey, I think you can go for it. I think it's safe. And then when we decided to, when we were talking about marriage, to have other men in my life who I know love God say, hey, look, I see Jesus in this. I think this is good. Man, that gives you so much peace, and has given us so much peace in our first year of marriage. And so the thing I'd say about boundaries is it's not like, it's not, we don't want to be legalistic here, right? So we're not saying, hey, like, so kiss tonight. We're not saying, hey, you can't kiss every day. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying, the purpose of boundaries is ultimately to protect the purpose of dating. So according to everything that we're all saying, the purpose of dating is to make a spirit-led decision. Should I get married? Right, that's what you're dating. You want to come to that conclusion. And I think the challenge comes when, for Jen and I, we realized, okay, if we get too physically or emotionally involved too quick, then it's going to be very difficult for us to make that decision. And so surrounding ourselves with the right people, and also putting the right, not just physical, but emotional boundaries in place. A lot of people date, and they, even in the church, they act like they're married and just don't have sex. And it's like, oh, we're dating, but there's an emotional closeness and spiritual closeness in marriage that does not exist in dating. So you talked about having authority to lead your wife. Like, you don't have that in dating as a guy, right? Like, you are not the spiritual head of your girlfriend. You are not that until you get married, right? And so there's just a big difference there. And we also did some things we try to be careful about not sitting together and dreaming about 20 years down the road, because we knew we hadn't decided if we were going to get married yet when we were dating. And so we're like, if we do that, we're getting too emotionally attached. And I think that's part of what makes breakups in our culture so difficult, is when people are dating, they act like they're married. And so it's like it almost feels like you're getting a divorce, because you got so close in that season. So I think that's some of what I would say.
Can I add something on?
Yeah.
So for those individuals that possibly may be in that same boat that me and Nicole were, if you've got kids, or if you are in that emotional or physical attachment like Chris was talking about, there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no condemnation.
Right.
You love God. This is why you're here, is to really find out what you need to do and what you need to focus on, and have that spirit-led decision, and know that, if me and Nicole would have had this prior to, then we would have had the boundaries and things set in place. Unfortunately, we had to take a step back to take a step forward, and we found those individuals in this room right here, and we were able to grow, because if we didn't find those people in the church and allow them to really speak truth, grace and truth to us, then it probably would have been a completely different story between Nicole and I. But because we had guys and women praying for us and rallying for us and showing us really the plan and purpose that God had for us, it made a world of difference. And so for you individuals that may have a child or may be in those relationships, we're praying for you. We're here for you. We want to be a resource for you, just like everybody on this stage.
That's good.
That's good. The only other thing I would say is, just so often when we talk about boundaries, we talk about what not to do and not what to do.
That's good.
And that's not always helpful. One of the things that I think really helped us is we were serving together every single week in the church. We met on the worship team. We went and did set up, tear down together. I very much got to see her character and who she was, because we were serving together all the time. So I think showing up to church together, going to small group together, if it's the right small group, serving together, all those different things are huge to talk about. How do I discover more about this person in a healthy way? How do I really see their character? I spent a lot of time with her family very early on. You want to find out who somebody really is? Hang out with them and their family. Hang out with them and their parents, because their family will call them out real quick if they start acting like somebody else. That's a big deal. And so many people, I think one of the questions asked something about, when do you introduce somebody to their parents?
Right.
Man, in American culture, it's like, you don't do that until it's serious and engaged. No, meet them before you even start dating, because they'll help you know who the other person really is. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so good. This, all that's fantastic. We're going to shift gears a little bit. Our panel tonight is about dating. It's also about singleness. There's a lot of singles in the room. We have some singles up here on the panel, and so I want to address this question at Sarah and Jessica. And I guess the biggest question, and there were several questions about singleness, but really, this one that was worded this way I really liked. It's when you find yourself in a place in your mid-20s, if you're single, and if you have a desire to be married, right? Not everyone who's single has a desire to be married, but if you do and you're not, and you've been in kind of a long, what you would feel like is a season of singleness, what would you say, and anyone can chime in on this, but I'd love to hear from Sarah and Jessica first, just what would you say to them in order to help them to not lose hope? And just so you guys know, Sarah and Jessica are up here because we prayed about it and we felt like there are people that we know that really navigated this season well. And there's lots of other people we know in the church who are singles who also have, but we feel like they have authority to speak into this. But what would you say to that person about how to have hope in that season?
Hello. Oh, it is working.
There you go.
It's okay. Can I go back to the boundaries of peace real quick?
Please.
Okay. And so one thing I did want to say about boundaries when it comes to setting them, you have to know why you're setting them. Right. You can't be doing it because, well, that's what Pastor Jonathan did or that's what Chris did. You truly need to know why you're setting them and bringing God into those boundaries that you're setting and the standards that you're making for those lives. And so when you're doing that, that is an important piece, but you also need to know yourself. And so knowing more of who you are and being honest about it is the important piece, because I can tell you a great boundary that sounds great, but will you actually keep it?
Right.
It depends on you knowing yourself and really why you're setting those. And so that's the only piece I wanted to add.
That's good, yeah.
But when it comes to the walking in singleness and not feeling hopeless, and you have that desire to be married, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also understanding discouragement will come. Or, let's be honest, let's be real. It will come, and that's not the problem. You see, even if you're feeling those feelings of discouragement, the issue is when you feel them, it's like, okay, God, I see. Who do you go to first? You got to go to God first. God, I'm feeling this way. I'm honest about this. I don't know. It's been 5 years and I've not dated, and this is going, like, being honest and truthful about what you're feeling is very important, and going to God first is that important piece. And the thing is about discouragement or feeling hopeless, it may not be your fault. You don't know where the feelings is coming from or why it's coming there. But if you decide to make the choice to stay there, then you're just putting that on yourself and just, I'm going to be discouraged and I'm just feeling bad. And I'm single and it's just horrible and I'm never going to be married. Speaking life into those different situations, but also having your team around you. Like they really talked about community and things like that. Call your friends up. Call the people who counsel you, who you trust, just at telling them I'm feeling this way and I'm single and it's been a long time, but can you speak life to me in this season, or what would you say about that? And that can be very helpful. Also, singleness is not a curse. Right. You are
Come
not.
on.
It's not. Like, marriage is beautiful. Like, it's great. It's good to celebrate. But singleness is not a curse. It's not, oh, I'm a married person now. I've made it. And so understanding really why you're discouraged is also taking it back, right? And so was I discouraged because I watched the show about married people and I realized that's it? Or was I on Instagram and it's #goals? Or this season and everybody's getting married? I mean, sometimes it's that simple. We go on Facebook and what do you see? Married, 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 married. And now you're sad and you're like, I don't know why I'm sad. And I ask, hey, you were on social media? What happened? And so it's like really being honest on what is going on in that piece, and where that discouragement is coming from can help you going through that season, and remembering that in the season of singleness, God has so much for you. Like, it's that time to be, it's you and God. It's a blessed season, like you and God, and you can devote your time to God. It's so important to remember that.
So good.
And I think that the question was originally phrased like, how do you not get discouraged in a season of singleness? And I think that it's not a matter of how do you not get discouraged, because Sarah was saying, you're going to get discouraged. I think it's a natural feeling that we often have, especially when we have expectations, or we're seeing the Instagram posts of people getting married and having babies and all these things that we want. I think it's a matter of how do I manage my discouragement when it comes, because I think that's the important part of like understanding that you're going to have these feelings, and how can I manage it when it comes. And I think we've talked about how in 1 Corinthians Paul says that singleness is a gift. And I know oftentimes it's like, it's a gift I do not want. Like, you can take that back. I don't want that. Or it's like the gift you hesitantly take. And I think a lot of times, we can pretend that the gift's not there, but it's still there, right? I think whenever you are single, we have a tendency to avoid really diving into what the gift of singleness is. And I think just being able to, like, when I think of a singleness season, I think of like your devotion to God. Like, how can I fully devote this time to God? Because I think, we don't have a husband or wife that we're talking to or having to make breakfast for and all these things, or we don't have kids running around. And so we've got this extra time really to dive into the Word and to serve God and to love people well. And I think really just devoting that time to God is so essential in your singleness season, because I still get discouraged, but I think my discouragement has been like, it's not as intense anymore, and I think it lasts shorter periods of time because I know that I'm devoting my time to God, and that's really my source, right? And so I think just really focusing in on, like, it doesn't bother me as much. It still bothers me, right? But it doesn't bother me as much. So I think that's really important just to remember.
That's good. One of the things Sarah touched on, yeah, y'all clap for that. That's good. Both of us, solid. Sarah, one of the things you touched on I think is great is understanding where your discouragement's coming from. Because if your discouragement is coming from comparison, getting married ain't going to fix that. You get married and you'll compare your marriage then to other people's marriages, and you'll stay discouraged in marriage. So understanding where your discouragement is coming from and learning to do something about that, to manage that, to go to God with that in your singleness will help you have a better marriage if you get married too. So like, what's the root issue? What's really going on? What's the lie that you're believing? What attack is Satan bringing? Just what's causing that? And man, what you guys said about dealing with that is fantastic.
I just have one little short thing to say too. Being single does not mean being alone. And I think that when you talk about singleness and like devoting yourself to God, like what you should do, it can sometimes sound like, oh, it's just me and God, and like it's so hard. And I just think it's so important to find like family, if you are away from your family, to find some other family that you can join into, not just singles, but also like other families. And I think this, needs to probably be preached to the married people and the families in the church, but we need to, as married couples and families, invite single people into our family groups too. And I think that's very important to be able to celebrate with them and, make them feel like a part of something, that's like a little bit more of like a couple and a family and stuff, that like single people are not by themselves. And like in this, when you get married, you don't like get into your family group and then like leave everyone else behind.
Right. That's so good.
Yeah, I think some of that comes back again to the purpose of marriage. The purpose of marriage is not to satisfy and make me happy and whole. It's to build the kingdom.
Right.
So we've been so blessed, and I really genuinely mean blessed. In the 12 years we've been married, we've had 4 different singles come and live with us. And that has kept us rooted and grounded and focused on, I think it's made our marriage better because it's made us think about things other than just us. And that's a big deal. So for sure, when you guys all get married one day, and to the married couples up here, yeah, absolutely. We should preach that a lot more. But man, we've got to be willing to make an investment and build community among singles too, and just invite them into it. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. That's all so good, guys. We're going to keep moving here a little bit because clock says we have 7 minutes and we've gotten through 3 questions. So we're going to move here a little bit, but I want to talk about this. We got to talk about this. And when you guys hinted at it, but a few questions came in about it is, one, just, is it wrong to live together if we're not married? And, I've heard people say, well, like, I know it's sin to have sex if I'm not married, but living together, what do you think about that? And then secondly, why? What would you guys say? I know Jonathan grabbed the microphone. He is dying to say something, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think, PJ?
Man, at the end of the day, I think it really comes.
Be gracious on us, okay?
I was actually praying about this morning. I said, God, I don't want to just give a bunch of rules.
Right.
It's about a relationship with you. It's about understanding your heart for us. So, and help me understand to a greater degree, like, why is this a big deal? And I told Chris this yesterday. I think sometimes answering this question, what's the danger of sex before marriage? What's the danger of cohabitation? When you're not married yet, or even when you've only been married a couple years, it's hard to explain the benefits or the consequences of that. But 12 years into marriage, I feel like I see some things different and have experienced some things differently. And I think one of the things that I really felt like God told me this morning is when you choose to cohabitate, when you choose to have sex before marriage, you're training yourself to have a bad sex life.
Wow.
Did you? That's all right. That's good now.
So, go with me for a second.
I heard the same thing.
So, a lot of culture talks about sexual compatibility.
Right.
I don't want to get married and have a bad sex life for the rest of my life. Nobody wants that. But if you're not a Christ follower, the truth is I understand the way they're thinking. Because I might marry someone and that person has no impetus to be selfless or sacrificial or care about my needs. And so the way sex is then is the way it's always going to be, so I need to know how it's going to be. But when you're a Christ follower, you're making a decision to be selfless and sacrificial. And so it doesn't matter where we start, because I know for the rest of my life, my sex life is going to get better every single year. Does it make sense? And it's true.
We're newlyweds.
When you've only been married a couple years, you can't see and experience that. But I can tell you, I am more like, and I don't mean this to sound prideful. Let me start it this way. This will help. My wife is more like Jesus today than she was the day I met her. She is far closer to him, has a deeper relationship with him. She's more selfless, more sacrificial, more patient, more gentle, more understanding. She has a greater desire to meet my needs than the day that I met her. And that has increased every single year. And I hope the same is true of me. I'll say it that way. And so the result of that, the outcome is our sex life, as well as every other aspect of our relationship, gets better. But when you think up front, let me live with this person and find out how it's going to be. Let me have sex and see how it's going to be. There's this implied idea that it's not going to change. And you're training yourself to have your needs met rather than focusing on the needs of the other person. And I think God is trying to protect us from that and say, don't make it about you at all. Make a decision about how you're going to build the kingdom and who you're going to partner with to do that. And if you're both selfless, both sacrificial, both running after Jesus, every aspect of your marriage, including your sex life, will get better over time. That's a big deal. I think God's trying to protect our hearts and all of that.
Yeah, it's huge.
I don't think I can add to that.
Nothing?
I don't think I can add to that. That was good.
Well, can I say something? I have no authority at all, but that's good, Pastor Jonathan, because I was just sitting there thinking about that question this morning, obviously. But it's that selfish piece, right? And so I would say just hearing other people share their stories more of how moving out of that alignment with God and having that sex before marriage, it's a constant questioning of, it's just the selfishness that comes from it, and that heart of, well, it was a desire, and it's who is the priority. So it's asking that question to us as who's that priority? Is it God the priority, or is it our flesh, our desires, and the next person? And with sex outside of marriage, you're submitting, you're so willing to submit your body to this man, but you're doing steps out of order. Because if I ask the question, well, were you willing to submit your finances yet, or why are you not married yet? And they're like, it's too much. You know, I have to do my finances with this person. I'm not sure even if I want to do it with this person. Your body and it being a temple of the Holy Spirit, and your relationship with God should be more of a priority than your finances, the things that you have, all these things that you want, and being scared to be joint on paper. That is an indication that sex before marriage, it shouldn't even be a thing. Doesn't work here. It's a problem because you're submitting yourself, but not even willing to submit all these other things that you've seen as a priority. And the truth is, you end up I mean, it might be harsh, okay? But you're disrespecting God and yourself. And it's a hard pill to swallow. And the other person too.
Yeah, that's good. I want to tack onto that question. I want to address this at Nicole and Jason. So say someone that because this was, you said this was a little bit of your story, your experience. Someone, they're dating, they're together, and they're watching online. They already had sex, right? They crossed that line. Maybe they're trying to be pure, but but fell, and then we all, right? And I want you to know, like, none of us are perfect people. Jen and I are not perfect people. Like, we struggled while we were dating, okay? And there's the grace of God put us on this stage, and that's true for all of us, okay? No matter what your boundaries were, like no one has done this perfectly. But what would you say? What would you say to them if they did fall short, or if they have been having sex or were trying to be pure and had sex in dating?
Really, I mean, the first thing I would do is just really fall on your knees and ask God for forgiveness, because He's the one that you need to talk to and communicate to, and just really pray through that. And again, it goes back to those boundaries being set up, and not beating yourself down, because the world is already beating you into this position to try and either get you to live together, have sex, whatever it may be. You really got to be able to say, God, forgive me, help me to move forward, help me to set healthy boundaries, and even, I mean, just hard setting boundaries around through that. Me and Nicole were not perfect. Obviously, we've got a 10-year-old, and we've been married for 8.5 years. But my thing is we could have continued to beat each other down if we weren't meeting our needs, or we could have gave it over to God, and that's exactly what we did. We gave it over to God because we wanted to be honoring to Him. We took the boundaries and the additional steps needed to actually step into our marriage in a more purifying way to honor Him and say, God, we want you to have control of that. And when we were able to do that, I mean, it just went back to what Nicole said, just the lights cutting on. And Jonathan is right that Nicole is more like Jesus today than she was back then. Because I'm telling you right now, it was more about her and it was more about me. What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me today? Are you going to cook my meals? Are you going to be home? Are you going to clean the house? All that stuff. And it was vice versa. That's exactly what it is. We're living together. Hey, what am I coming home to?
A messy house.
Exactly. If I'm contributing to the bills, because honestly, at the end of the day, it would have been easier for me to listen to the world and be like, look, she ain't good for you, walk away. Yeah, you got a kid, but you can take care of that kid and not take care of her. Let's just be honest. That's what the world's going to say. Is just throw it all away. That's what they're going to tell you. But we decided to fight, push through, get the help in the community that we needed, take the proper steps as far as creating boundaries to be able to honor God and step into an honorable marriage when it came to it.
It's really good. It's so good. Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So, of course, forgiveness is huge. There's no shame, there's no condemnation for your past. Ladies, I'm just going to pinpoint this to you because I'm a lady, I can't relate to the men. Like, what are you portraying to people of the opposite sex?
Wow.
So, are you dressing a certain way? Are you acting a certain way? Are you throwing yourself out to men to see who's going to catch me? And so, like, if you're kind of in that, if you've already had sex and all that, just take a step back and reflect on who you are and where you want to be, and set up those boundaries so you can get to that point. Instead of living in the world, live for what God has created you to be.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. Yeah. Well, we're over time here, but I have two questions I want to be sure we get to. And one of them is this. It's and I'm going to say it just how it was asked. So this person asked, how do you navigate a new relationship when you have previously experienced trauma in an intimate relationship? How do you overcome the fear of being hurt again or shame for your story when you begin opening up to a new potential partner?
Go through a freedom group.
Come on.
Okay, let me expand on that. It seems like such a simple answer to do, but that curriculum was game changer for me, because I went into that with shame, condemnation, trauma from past relationships, physically, emotionally, just abusive. And it was in that small group and through that conference that I was able to remove. I didn't know what sexual strongholds were. Like, I didn't know any of that. And so going through freedom, I was able to break that and to understand why. So it's one thing for somebody to tell me something, but for me to actually understand it. And freedom helped me to do that. And I didn't just go through it once. I went through it multiple times, because like peeling the layer of onion, there's more things that you uncover after you take off that first layer.
That's good. Yeah.
I would just say be okay slowing down. And not letting anybody else place an expectation on what moving forward should look like for you. So the two real relationships that I had before Alexa, both of them cheated on me. And so I walked into our relationship with a ton of insecurity and pain and hurt. And that 3-month period of praying about should I start this relationship was huge for me. It was a massive deal in my life. Including all that community was a big deal. Learning to be honest with my wife, which honestly has taken 10 years at least, to say, I'm afraid of this because of my past relationships. I'm angry right now, not at you, but because this thing has happened. And because I connect it to you, even though that's not fair to you. And so, but the only way you can get to those heart things, like what am I really upset? What am I really frustrated by? What am I really hurt by? And not just accuse the new person you're stepping into a relationship with, is to slow down and let God speak and answer those questions for you. So you've got to slow down if you've walked through hurt and pain, and you have to be honest about your hurt and pain and where it's come from.
Yeah, I think that's so good, Jonathan. And as I mentioned earlier, this is exactly kind of my story, is that I was engaged before and my fiance passed away. And I originally put a timeline on myself. I was like, okay, I'm not going to date for a whole year until I've kind of walked through this year of grieving. And I don't necessarily recommend that. I just kind of did it. But it really was, because you can't really put a timeline on grief. That's why I say that. But it really did help me, because even in that season, in that year, it's really easy to just try to find somebody else to replace. And so I did talk to a couple different people and felt like I needed something, and like I needed to be full, because I had this other relationship and he died, and I needed something to fill that void. And I did need something, but it was Jesus that I needed. And that's the scariest place to be, is when you're trying to fill the void of Jesus with something that's not Jesus. And so that would be my greatest advice, is just lean into Jesus. And it was crazy, just kind of what Nicole said. I didn't even think about this, but I did go through the Freedom curriculum during that year, and 21 Days of Prayer was really that 2 weeks right after, my fiance's name was Ryan, right after Ryan died was 21 Days of Prayer. And so each day just really just crying, being on the floor, and giving my heart to Jesus. And really, I would just say, you need to heal before you step into another relationship. And there was the time when I was praying about Chris, and it was really confusing. I was like, wait, am I healed? Am I okay to date again? What are people going to think? What is Ryan's family going to think? There were so many things. And really, I just had to pray about it and come to my own conclusion myself. There were steps I had to take. I was still wearing my engagement ring from Ryan. I needed to take steps to heal and to take the ring off, and things that would help Chris too, stepping into the relationship, that he would have confidence that I am ready, I am healed. Because the worst thing too would be if I wasn't healed and I was still trying to get Chris to be Ryan, then I would have entered that relationship and would have made that a mess, because he can't be Ryan. So, yeah, I think there just has to be a healing process and time with Jesus, like Pastor Jonathan said, just kind of slow down and pause. Did you ever think?
No, I think that's all really good. And and I want to be sure we get to this one last topic. And again, a couple questions around this topic. And it was about something that's so big, so huge in our culture, and it was a struggle with pornography. I know that's something that's been a struggle in my life. I've talked about it from this stage, and just a huge part of my story is finding freedom from that. But people asking about, how can pornography, struggling with it as a single person, what's the harm in struggling with pornography as a single person? If I'm not married, how does that affect my dating relationship? How does it affect my marriage? And ultimately, how can I find freedom from that? Would anybody like to just talk about that real quick?
So, I mean, I'll go with it. So, I mean, I think some of you guys sitting in here kind of know my story, but at the age of 13, I was exposed to pornography, and I really struggled till the age of 25. The primary thing is anytime that I would step into a relationship, that's instantly what I wanted, was that sexual fulfillment. And you basically walk away from those relationships feeling more rejected because it wasn't up to what you are used to looking at. And so when I actually was dating Nicole, even before we got married, it was one of those things where I felt like I needed to be open and honest. It wasn't received at that point in time because she didn't understand like what it really meant. When you're dealing with pornography, you have to understand that industry is all just about trying to bring you this falsehood, this mask to wear that is essentially going to destroy you spiritually, emotionally, physically, and leave you empty because it is nothing but a black hole. The steps that I took after that, I got obviously men like Pastor Jonathan, a number of guys around me, but I have three main guys that know everything about me in and out, that constantly check on me, that ensure that I'm doing okay. Because Pastor Allen's the same way, you never want to slip. You never want to slip. And so I make sure that I have the proper support group around me because of what I started at the age of 13 and what followed me to 25. When you start getting into serious relationships and you're looking at marrying someone, you're going to need a lot of grace, you're going to need a lot of truth, you're going to need a lot of healing, because you're going to feel a lot of emptiness, a lot of rejection, and just one area that is just so detrimental to a relationship and just to a person in general is staying in the dark about it.
Right.
That is the number one way that the devil will use pornography against you, is like, nobody knows except you.
Right.
And that's a lie.
Right.
Your Heavenly Father loves you. He wants the best for you. He's wanting you to come out of that. But I need to be able to go to Jonathan and be like, hey, man, I'm struggling. This is what I'm struggling with. I need you to pray for me. I need you to help me to create these boundaries and kind of lead me to some individuals that have done the right things so I can continue to stay free in my heart, in my soul, and to be able to continue to make sure that my marriage is safe from that, to put in those safe holes in a sense, and allow God to just continue to pray. Just continue to pray, continue to seek God, but have that support system around you.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah.
So from my point of view, it was really hard for me to understand, like, why? Like, I don't get it, like, why do you want to watch this? Why does this, like, why? Like, that was just that's why when he said it was hard for me to understand, it's because that wasn't what I lived, until I started to research what it does to a person's mind. And Jason was really good at explaining to me that pornography it's like it has this like same chemical response in your body like drugs do. So you have this like constant like want to see this, to get this high off of this thing, and because it's an image, you can't get images out of your brain like you can remove drugs from your body. So it's easy to recite or to bring these images back into your brain. And so once I understood, like, this is like an addiction, like, I didn't think it was an addiction. And then once I did, there was a lot of grace and compassion. And I started leading a small group for other women whose husbands were also going through that. And there's just so much healing and understanding the addiction, instead of like brushing them off and saying, oh, we're going to get divorced because of this. No, it was like, okay, there's grace. Let's figure out what's doing, and let's do this together.
So good. So good. Well, I think that one last thing that I'll say is just that, someone asked, how do you overcome this? What's been the most helpful thing in overcoming pornography? And I think that, accountability, all the practical things are huge. But I think for me, a huge thing spiritually and emotionally was just realizing that God loved me just as much when I was in it as he would when I would come out of it. You know, I always thought, well, once I get over this, God will somehow like me more. And I just remember the day I was sitting there and I was realizing, man, like, he sent Jesus to die for me while I'm still in this. And right now, he loves me as much as he ever will. And I think that was probably the most freeing thing for me. Well, we're 13 minutes over time. But hasn't this been so good tonight? Just give it for all the panelists. Any departing words anybody wants to say?
I just want to say about these two single women up here. I just want to say I appreciate both of you.
Yeah.
I mean, some of what y'all shared tonight, and as a pastor, watching the way you live your lives as church members, I just want to honor both of you. I mean, I have so much respect for both of you and single guys out there. I'm just saying without saying. But no, for real, I mean, we just appreciate you guys so much, and thank you for being a part of our family. I mean that. And Jason, I mean, just as a brother, I just want to say I look up to you so much as a man of integrity for the way that you've grown and loved your spouse. And Chris, I would say the same thing to you. I mean, you've come such a long way in your journey, just growing into a new husband and what God's going to do. And so I just love all of you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we have lots of amazing single guys out here too, but we wanted to highlight Jessica and Sarah are leading a small group. What's your small group called this semester?
Striding in your singleness.
Right. So ladies, hop in that group. It's going to be amazing. But once again, give it for all of our panelists, please. Such a great night tonight. Awesome. Well, guys, we're gonna close out our night tonight, and our worship band's going to come back up. We're going to sing just one more song, and then that'll be all for tonight. But I just wanted to take a moment just to talk to you guys. You know, these topics can be difficult for a lot of us, right? A lot of us in the room, a lot of us watching online have had a whole lot of different situations happen with relationships. We're living in different situations with relationships, trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. What is God up to in this? And I felt like we could not let tonight get away without saying this, just that, I think one of the things, and Jenna said this tonight, but one of the things that can make relationships so hard is when we're trying to find, and it can make singleness so hard, when we're hoping to find a love or a affirmation or a purpose in another person that only God himself can fill in our hearts. Right? That's what makes this so difficult, is when we're looking for this love. And then one of the hardest things in the world is to think you find that and you found that, and then to only realize, well, this doesn't fill my soul like I thought it would. Man, there is a desire that God has put in our hearts to be loved perfectly and to be known fully. And I'm telling you, that is only found in relationship with Jesus. It's not found in any person. I think a lot of people are looking, like we talked about, looking for the one. Jesus is the one. And I think our culture teaches us that because there's this idea, if you find the right person, they'll fulfill you, but they really won't. Only Jesus will. And at the end of the day, the thing that makes a healthy single person, a healthy dating person, a healthy married person is someone who knows God's love for them, who's walking with Jesus, who's filled with the Holy Spirit. That's what makes the difference. That's what you need. I love 1 John chapter 4, verse 10 says this. It says, "This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son as a sacrifice for our sins." And I just want to talk to you just as your pastor for a minute. Man, just if you've been struggling with this, and I know this is hard, do you know how much God loves you? Do you know how much your Father loves you? So much that Jesus went and he died on the cross, and it wasn't an easy death. He died on the cross. He hung there for a full day. His hands nailed to his side, his feet nailed to it. He bled out, and he did that. Why? Because he loves you. And if you get absolutely nothing else from this event tonight, if you get nothing else from anything that anyone said, that's what we want you to know tonight, is that God loves you, that Jesus loves you. And here's what the Bible says about our relationship with God. The Bible says that all of us have sinned. All of us have fallen short of God's glory. All of us have messed up in some way. And you might think, oh, well, I've messed up in a way like no one else has. That's not true. There's someone else in the room who's probably struggling with or has struggled with the same thing that you are. And God knows that, and he knew that. And so he sent his son Jesus to come and to die on the cross, to bear the penalty, to bear the weight of all of your sin, so that you could receive forgiveness, so that you could have a relationship with him. It's a kind of love that loves you at your worst moments. It's a kind of love that will never leave you and that will never forsake you.